I love this room. I've had too many opportunities to speak where I stand here the entire time and cannot move. So this is going to be great. Thanks for coming again. This talk I've affectionately called Roadrunner Rules, or more what you call guidelines for design systems. I'll actually get back to that in a second. This is me, Senior Design Director, Microsoft, wrote this book. You can pick up a copy at fea.pub. It's not a short link to it. Catch me on Twitter at Micah Godbolt. I've got a small blog that I occasionally update at micah.codes, and check that out. So again, this is Roadrunner Rules, or what you call guidelines of design systems. And what I want to talk to you about today is design systems, but I have a few things to talk about first. What I want to talk about first is this little girl. This is my daughter. She is 4. Her name is Emery, and she likes flowers, as most kids do. But when she asks for a flower, she says, "Daddy, can I have a flower?" Nice question to ask. If I don't respond quickly or give her a flower enough time, she's like, "Daddy, I want a flower now." That's a 4-year-old. And then when you get it to give her the flower, just like you for a 4-year-old does, like, "Oh, this flower is beautiful," and your heart melts, and you're like, "I should have given her 2 flowers." And now this is my son. He is 2.5 or so now. When he asks for a flower, he typically just says, "Flower?" And when you don't give it to him fast enough, which is usually about a half a second, "Flower!" And once you do, it's flower. That's my 2-year-old, and he's wonderful. So what is the difference between these 2 kids? They're obviously, one's older, one's younger. They have a different command of the language. And to understand really that difference of the command of that language, we can take a look at a thing called linguistics to understand that difference. And I want to dive into this real quick because it'll connect eventually. Just give me a little bit of time to get there. Linguistics is a set of structural rules governing the composition of clauses, phrases, and the words in any given natural language. So again, we're talking about speaking, about talking here, and the language my 2 kids use. So let's take a look at this sentence of "this flower looks beautiful." And what we can see that linguistics allows us to break this thing down from this complex sentence all the way down to the smallest pieces. And let's see how linguistics does that. The first thing that linguistics teaches you is about the syntax of a sentence. That's the structure of sentences and the study of that. So when we have, and my timer's not running if anyone cares about how long I'm going to go. When we took a look at this word, the sentence of "this flower looks beautiful," we can see that it's broken down to an article and a noun, as well as a verb and an adjective. All right, that's great. The first part turns into a noun phrase, second part into a verb phrase. That entire thing makes the sentence. So the syntax explains to us how all these words are put together to create all of this meaning. So these single words turn into a sentence which conveys to my heart that I should be melting now because my daughter is so cute. That's syntax. Now, past syntax, we want to take those individual words and understand the meaning behind those words. Morphology gives us an understanding of these words by breaking them down to individual morphemes. Each of these morphemes can be something like a noun, like beauty, an adjective, like beautiful, like full. I'll get this right eventually. You put the 2 together, and you have a much more impactful adjective of beautiful. Morphology allows us to break these things down into smaller pieces, put them together to make more complex words. You can imagine much longer words being full of many, many more morphemes with much more complex meaning. That's morphology. Phonology, the understanding of sound and the organization of sound. So as we look at a single part of that, a single morpheme of that, like beauty, we realize there's 2 syllables in that, bu and t. Phonology lets us break that down even further, not just bu and t, but even the onset and rhyme of each of those syllables, b, u, t, e. We can break these things down to the smallest possible pieces of our language, of the way we speak and communicate. And every language is going to be very different. These are sounds very specific to our language. You go to other languages, you're going to find clicks and all sorts of other sounds that we never even use. This is our language broken down to the smallest pieces. So as we look at this sentence of "this flower looks beautiful," we realize this is composed of many, many tiny phonemes and all the onset and rhymes and into the morphemes and into all of the syntax to give us actual meaning of the sentence. And these are the sentences we use every day without even thinking about them. So what does linguistics have to do with design systems? Well, absolutely nothing. But what it does have to do with is visual language. And what I want to talk about for a second is visual language, because I would like to propose this idea that we can take the same scientific study that we did of a verbal language, written language, and use that same thing on a visual language. And I know you're saying right now, Micah, visual languages and website design are a bunch of pretty pictures. You can't do scientific study of pretty pictures. You throw some colors and some fonts, it looks fine, and everyone's happy, right? Designers are shaking their heads and shaking their fists like, no, it's way more than that. So I want to try and convince you that we should take that much time and effort and study of our visual languages as we do of our verbal languages. Let's take a look at this quote. I love these screens, by the way. It's so really nice to be able to stand here and actually still see my slides. Wikipedia defines a visual language as a system of communication using verbal or visual elements. Communication. Visual elements. This is definitely sounding like a language, like something that's supposed to convey some meaning. Actually, there's two parts to this conveying of meaning that a visual language does. For one, it communicates ideas. Communicates the idea of trust or value or reliability. Can you vote and trust for this client? Trust this client. Whether it's a product, as someone trying to position themselves as a leader in industry, can this visual language promote that and sell that idea to the user that visits your site? Now, a website is not just this pretty picture or some kind of a poster, but it's actually this interactive experience. You're actually going to interact with what you're putting on the screen. And so one of the other goals that this has is to communicate intention. We want our visual language to speak to the user to say, this is what I would like you to do. I spent the last 2.5 years before Microsoft working at Red Hat, and this was one of the pages I came across while putting the stock together, and I loved it because everything about this slide, everything about the text, everything about this big splash of a homepage that you come to at redhat.com leads to one thing, that red button. Everything we do here says, please click on this, learn more, dive into what we want to tell you. Everything about the visual language, from the lines of the background to the sloping of the text, says click here. That's visual language communicating intention. It speaks to the users coming into your site. But we're not just about talking communication, or that's not the only similarity between that and a verbal language. There's also a lot of commonalities in other parts. IBM defines their visual language as a shared vocabulary for design. So both this verbal language and visual language both share vocabularies. There's different words that are composed and used within this language. Now, that's not the only similarity. There's a couple other traits that are kind of common between the two. For one, they both have this concept of dialects. Dialects are a difference in language between cultural or geographical differences. And we can see that in really apparent in this example here. Look at the word lengths, the information density, the colors, the use of colors here. This is a Japanese website. This is the English version of their website. And you can see prominent blacks and reds. Those are pretty good for us. We like that in a news website. That kind of feels normal. We can see the spacing, the white spacing, the amount of density of the information. There's only about 5 articles on this page you can see at one given time. Same website, same day, different language, different culture, different people, different expectations. Different word lengths, different information density, different power colors. Completely different visual language for the exact same website. Dialects. Moving on to jargon. The concept of jargon is going to be a language that's specific to a certain group of people, say web developers or doctors or something like that. And we have that as well inside of web development. Take a look at these. What are these? We all know what these are. We've looked at these all the time. We probably signed up for one of these this morning. This is a price quality matrix. When we go to like Dropbox or sign up for some other service, we want to know what levels can we choose from. You know, low, high, do we need lots of users, small users, little data, no data? Like, we want to know what all of our options are. If we don't see this, we're kind of wondering, like, hey, could I get a better deal if I get more data or maybe less, or if I buy a larger, more RAM for the server? What are my options? And these price quality matrix are part of our vocabulary. Slang. Slang is the invention of words or the repurposing of words for other uses. And that's definitely apparent in visual languages as well. We know what this is? besides happy days. This is a carousel, of course. And of course, those buttons, when you click on them, it rotates to the carousel. Of course, everyone knows that. The buttons at the bottom, of course, there's 3 of them. So we know there are 3 images in this carousel. And if we click on them, we can jump to any of those images. We know that. We know that because we're used to this slang inside of our language. We also know what these do. We know exactly what these do. They're everywhere. We can't escape them until next year when they go out of vogue and other paradigms come in for our navigation. This is slang. This is something we're all used to. This is something that's been made up or appropriated from somewhere else and used for some other purpose. Slang is another example of the similarities between our verbal language and our visual language. So if we can take the same idea of linguistics, the structural rules governing composition and clauses, if we can take the scientific study and apply it to also visual languages, we might get some interesting results out of that. So let's try that here today and see where that goes. Let's go from the ground up. Let's talk about the smallest pieces first and go back to this idea of phonology, organization of sounds within our visual language, and talk about what would be a sound in our visual language. Sound would be something like layout, balance, white space, priority. Typography, weight, scale, font choices, font comparisons from one to another. Iconography, the types of icons we use, whether it be for an interface or some kind of ornamentation, the style of those, the way they're presented, the way that they're used, that is definitely part of the visual language that we present to a user. Another sound would be color. The types of color we use, the tints and the shades, the contrast, the accessibility ratios. This is part of what we design into our visual language, and this is a very important part. As I said before, the sites we build aren't static websites. They're not static pages of just something to look at. They're something to interact with. And as we interact with it, we want that to interact back with us. We want animations. We want to know that we've clicked on a button and something is about to happen. And the way those animations are presented, the number of animations, the places where there are animations are not animations, are also part of that visual language to create that consistency for the user. So we move up a step. We've got all of our phonemes figured out. How can we combine those together to create words? What is a word in a visual language? Well, here's 2 different words. There's an input box, a submit button. You might call that input box like a noun and submit like a verb. Hey, that kind of works as a parallel. Let's add some of those phonemes to it and try and build this up into a more complex word. We can add a little bit of layout. Didn't change much, sorry. A little bit of layout. We can definitely see add some typography, some uppercase, some different font colors, some different font sizes. That's great. Add some iconography. Now we've got kind of intention. We kind of know something. When that submit happens, something's going to happen next. We might have some kind of indicator on the input box of how strong your password is. We definitely want to bring brand colors into there, so you know this is part of kind of a whole cohesive system with your brand in mind. And then animation. When you click on those and you interact with those inputs, what happens? Click on that submit. Oh, it's thinking. Something's going to happen here very shortly. Or we start typing in the password indicator, and that indicator, or in the password box, and the indicator starts changing as we go. So we've created these complex words out of all of these small phonemes. Now what can we do with them? Because these 2 words by themselves don't really mean much. Sure, create a password, then what? Click the submit button, what happens then? But if we use syntax to explain how these things can be put together to create meaning, we now have a small sentence. Put in a password, hit submit. We understand those things now work together in harmony. But where are we? What password am I submitting? What's going to happen when this is all done? Oh, Parks R Us. Cool. I like this website. I would like to log in. Thank you very much. And to get even more context of that, where is the site? What is happening? What is the rest of the visual language happening inside of this, going from sentence into paragraph into a chapter in books? This visual language allows us to understand how all these pieces are put together. Now, this might look kind of familiar. I know it's familiar to me when I put it together. I was like, why am I doing all this work? Somebody already did it for me. It's called atomic design. Brad Frost has been working and talking about this and evangelizing for this for a number of years. This idea of small atoms going into smaller or larger molecules, going into larger organisms, going into templates, and going into pages. It's been something he's been talking about for quite a while. But the thing was, he wasn't the first, not even close. This was back in 1999. 99. This was back before we even had like really decent CSS. Like how old is this? Anyway, Frog Design, a company that helped design the new Dell.com at the time. It was such a success. It was one of the largest and most profitable websites, e-commerce websites of the time. And they had started using atomic design, this idea of these small pieces they can build and then combine together to create these much larger interfaces. So this study of a visual language, the study of taking a large website and breaking it down to smaller pieces, smaller pieces, smaller pieces, smallest pieces possible, has been going on for decades. In visual language, it's been going on for decades within the web. In verbal language, it's been going on for hundreds of years. We've always understood that we need to take these more complex things and break them down. So, if we take that linguistics example, we take out natural and put in visual language, we really can't call this linguistics anymore. There's linguistics people saying, hey, that's not linguistics. Linguistics is languages, or spoken languages. We can call this design systems. And that, to me, is what a design system is. And it's that understanding that you need before you can even try and understand how to build a design system. What is the purpose of a design system? What is that end goal? And that end goal is to understand a visual language and to be able to break a visual language down from the complex, huge chapters of information we want to communicate down to the smallest pieces possible. Design systems. So, that's a Wikipedia definition with some words chopped out of it. Probably not the best example to take home and put on tweets and whatnot. So let's take a look at this again. I asked when putting this talk together, what do people want to know about design systems? And a friend of mine said, well, what is a design system in your own words? And I thought that'd be a good opportunity for me to try and explain what I really thought a design system was. Now, being on Twitter, I had a couple opportunities here. I could go to Medium and write a very lofty think piece of many, many words and put that out to the internet. I could start a tweet storm of 20 different tweets and eventually storyfy that and all of this. Or I could be a little masochistic and try and fit the entire definition into a single tweet minus his name. And being crazy and a little bit lazy, that's what I exactly did. So the definition that I came up with is a design system is a set of rules and assets that define how to express everything a visual language needs to say. Now, I've been doing podcasts for a while and blogging and various things and needing to tweet about what I'm doing. And oftentimes, having to get that into a tweet to explain what am I doing, what am I about to try and sell you, basically, click on this link, to get that down to a tweet is always a fun challenge because you don't have a lot of words. And you got to figure out which words need to stay, which words need to go. So boiling this down to a single tweet was really helpful for me because it helped me understand what are the essential pieces of a design system. So for me, rules and assets are a really big part. And I want to dive in those first, and I'll get into the second part of it after that. So when we talk about rules, we talk about a number of things. Things like methodologies, whether you're using OOCSS, separation of structure and skin, separation of container and content. There's a good little example of how this code might look in that coding format. Or SMACs. SMACs kind of dives into even more like kind of the folder structure. How is the CSS organized? How is the CSS layered on top of the HTML to create your finished product? And that's another example of code. BEM, which is really focused on kind of naming conventions and the way you apply styles to your markup. Narrowing everything down to a single unique class name. And then having modifiers that extend off of those class names. Or, if you're not going to follow those exactly to the T, make something that works for you and your team and document that. At Red Hat, we came up with a system that we called Beaks, kind of borrowed off Bloq elements. But then instead of using modifiers, we used attributes for all of our variations. So you don't have to follow one of those specifically, but follow something and make something. Have an idea of what is the methodology that you and your team are going to be using to create this system. Because somehow you need to connect your CSS with your HTML. You can't just expect it to happen magically. Beyond methodologies, we have things like just general rules of thumbs that we should all follow as we're building all of our code. The first one being a single source of truth. The idea that for everything on a page, there's a single source where that is coming from. There's one place responsible for the styles of that code. So as you see, we've got this blog feed with an H1. Inside of it is an article with a title on it, also inside of an H1. So if we have this as CSS, this top blog feed H1 is going to hit both. Okay, well that's great. But what happens if we want to change the styles of the H1 with the title tag on it? So we do that. Okay, it gets the job done. But now we've got styles coming from two different places. So I ask you, if we want to change the style of that A blog title, where do those styles go? Do they go in the blog feed H1? Do they go in the article.title? Or maybe blog feed.title? Now we have three places. We don't know specifically where those styles are supposed to go to whenever we do this. Of course, this is a small example, but as you know, in much larger projects, this becomes a very big question. Where do these styles go? With single source of truth, there's never a question of that, of where they should go or where they come from. Another rule of thumb you might bring into your project is something like the single responsibility principle. A couple ways to apply this. One in a more functional CSS, being every class does one thing, like floating left, floating right, alignment, font sizes, very specific uses for each piece of CSS or each class name. Or the idea that every single class is only used in one place. It's usually what I prescribe to because I'm more of an object-oriented kind of guy. So an example like this, where I've got a headline, if it's used in the blog feed and in the footer, this becomes a problem because that's not single responsibility. That has now two responsibilities. Because what happens again if I need to go to the blog feed and say, we need that headline to be uppercase? Sure, I can do that, no problem. Blog feed, headline, text transform. Whoops, we just broke our, whoops, I went too far. We just broke our first rule of single source of truth by doing that. There we go, I had one more click. So by having both of those rules together, we can enforce this really consistent structure of where styles come from and what styles do. These are the kind of rules you need to think about to write up and to enforce in your project. And there's many others that you might come up with as well. Flat CSS selectors, I apologize, I wrote this, and it's probably still live today. Worst thing about it is that when you need to override it, the override looks kind of like, oh, really? Hey, like that, because that wasn't me. But you took away the impact. This is about 7 different classes, another 3 or 4 elements in there. This gets to be a specificity nightmare. Please don't do it. That's the whole reason for BEM and these approaches, is you can do the exact same thing with a single class. And if you're following a lot of these rules and structures, you never need to use more than 1 or 2 classes. You never need to get to this 75 specificity to beat the 74 specificity you had beforehand. Now, there's other types of rules that we might want to bring in, such as asset guidelines, like how do we create our icons? What is the shape? What is the style? What is the feel we're going for? Even inside of our photography, what style of photography are we going to use? What is the pose of the people in the photography? What are the colors? There's also going to be a lot of rules that don't fall in any of these categories. And at Red Hat, we found ourselves coming up with several of these. But the problem was we never really wrote them down. We never made them visible. We never really agreed upon them. And they were certainly not actionable if we couldn't find them and agree upon them. So we realized we need to sit down and write them out. We need to figure out what are these rules we're trying to live by, follow, and make sure everyone follows as well. This was floated around the internet around the same time. This is Chuck Jones' Roadrunner rules, hence the name of the talk. And the idea is that Chuck Jones wrote these rules for his animators, for his writers, for his producers of this is what the universe of the Roadrunner is like, such as the Roadrunner can't go off the road. Otherwise, he wouldn't be a Roadrunner. There's no dialogue in the Roadrunner except for beep, beep. And the Roadrunner can't harm the coyote except for going, of course, beep, beep. And all sorts of rules that made for this extremely cohesive universe that the Roadrunner and the coyote lived in. And that's what I wanted to create. I wanted to create a set of rules that create this cohesive universe that all of our code lives in. 2+ years later, after we wrote these rules, we were still living by them. Every piece of code we introduced to our design system followed these rules. As we had conversations about how should we build this new piece, we might say, hey, we could do this. If we did that, it would violate rule number 3. Let's not do it that way. Let's go a different direction. Because of that consistency, we created a much more cohesive, much more consistent universe for our code to live in. So we talked about rules. Let's talk about assets. Design system is not much if we don't actually have code. It's kind of our job, right? So HTML is kind of the first one we want to talk about. That's obviously the first place we need to start when writing. But there's various ways we can provide that markup to our users. One might just be, here's the markup, copy, paste, enjoy, have fun. That's something you find with like Bootstrap or Foundation or something else that's really just a framework for you to build your application on top of. The problem here, obviously, is once somebody copies and pastes, your connection to that markup is done. If you need to change your markup, update it, security fixes, whatever the case is, you have to convince your users to use that and update and hope they didn't modify it in the process. Another approach would be to create templates. This is a template from Drupal 8 using the Twig template. And the idea here is you can push out maybe a theme in WordPress or some templates within Drupal or whatever the application you're using, and people just ingest those templates and send data to them. And great, you're able to render that markup. This is much better because then if you need to change that H3 to an H2 in the future, it's extremely easy. You just push out those new templates. But you can take this one step further, as we did at Red Hat, and is also exampled here in Lonely Planet's Rizzo style guide. This idea of an API-driven HTML, or API-driven component. This notion that you really never even see the markup. The markup actually should not matter to you at all, because today it could be one thing, tomorrow it could be something completely different. But the interface into that component is always going to be the same, unless deprecated and all those kind of things. But it's not something they're going to change without informing you and making sure you're aware of. So in this case, it's completely blown out. Apologize. There's a Ruby function call that you pass some parameters into, and the return is markup. That markup could come from one template. The markup could come from 20 templates. Tomorrow, it could come from 30 templates or 5 templates. It doesn't matter. As a user, you have an API to the component. It returns markup. That's what matters. That's another way to approach it. It's extremely powerful, and I hope a lot of people move that direction. I know we are at Red Hat, and I know we're actually moving that way at Microsoft as well. So once you have HTML, that obviously needs to link to something, CSS, JavaScript, fonts, images, those types of things. How do those travel along with your system? Is that something that you just have to drop into Git and just commit away? It's kind of nasty. Maybe it's something you version out, using semantic version to do releases. Something you release and people can install using Bower or NPM. There's also assets that might make that finished release. Things like your Sass, JavaScript modules, or maybe the task runners that actually build all these things out. How are you going to manage those? What kind of workflow are you going to have? Make it easy for somebody to create a new component and get that component into your actual release. That's part of your design system, and don't forget about it. It's extremely important. Whether you use NPM, Grunt, Gulp, or Composer, or a Ruby framework, or whatever the case is, make sure that there's a system that allows you to easily create something and get that into a release. Now, as a developer, it might be fine. We can go into our code editor, do finds, get to the file we need, find the documentation, all those types of things. But for any outside user, any designer, any project manager, QA, anyone else that might be trying to work with your system, you need to have a way to document and give that to them so they can actually use it as well. And there's a couple of various ways to do that. You could create a style guide, something like KSS, Living Style Guide, Hologram. There's a bunch of great examples out there, a bunch of great tools out there that allow you to basically write documentation so people can go to your style guide and say, oh, these are the colors, these are the fonts, maybe here's some markup to copy and paste and those types of things. Now, a style guide, though, is based really on your markup, or sorry, is based on, say, like a markdown file. You're going to be writing a majority of this. A different example would be jumping into something more of a pattern library. In a pattern library, your templates are now the first-class citizens. Your templates are what drive each of the pages. So this fractal example, it's a template that's rendering that hello world. It's the template that's creating the markup and the information below it. If you were to write some additional markdown information, it would show up ancillary. The template is really what matters. You find the same thing in Pattern Lab, CloudForce, Drizzle. Pattern libraries are becoming a lot more important as we move forward. Or you can be crazy and roll your own. We've seen this in Lightning Design System, Rizzo's Lonely Planet, or at Red Hat, we decided we had some needs that just weren't met by anything out there at the moment, so we wrote our own. There's a lot of tools out there that make it a lot easier than we think. So to wrap this up, closely to wrap it up, we talked about the rules and assets. Let's talk about the second half of that definition. That we want to define how to express everything a visual language needs to say. When we speak, when I communicate to you, I need the words to be able to say to you to convey information, to convey meaning. In the same way, the design system needs a way to convey information. So look at this design. This is the page that were given to us really early on in our system building. We were asked to build this page. This is what the finished page looks like. It's big. There's a lot to say here. There's a lot of things that need to be communicated here. There's news releases. There's favorite clients. There's updates, and I can't read all this fine print. There's a lot of things that our team wanted to say to our clients. And we need to make sure we have a design system capable of doing that. So we took a look at let's take a look at a couple of these bands and see how our system made that possible. So first thing we need to do is break this down into some layouts. We realized we needed some reusable layouts, so we weren't making layouts every single time we had a new band of information. So here's a band, header, body, footer. Body's got an area to put lots of content inside of. It can be various layouts from galleries to 3-up, 9. We were on a 12-column grid, so 9 3s and 8 4s and 4 4 4s and so on and so forth. But we needed content to put inside of it. We didn't want to create content over and over again. So when we created our image embed, we made sure this image could work for logos, could work for icons, it could work for full page spreads, it could work for any place we need to place an image. In the same way, a band header. Every band header should be consistent. There's no need to make those over and over again. So we do exactly that. Same thing with our call to action buttons. Just about any time you see a call to action button, at least in the new stuff we've created, it's all going to be coming from the same component. There's no need to reinvent that wheel. So to finish out this design, all we need is a video embed. Just like the image embed, this video embed can be used anywhere. It can be used for a small embed like this. It can be used for a full page embed. It's the exact same piece of code, the exact same template used everywhere. So with just those 4 pieces, let's go back to this original design. We were given this design and said, you've got a lot of work ahead of you. This is going to be a lot of work. Get to it. This is going to take a lot of time. We realized that, well, that's done. All those are done. Yep, those are done. Yep, those are done. Yeah, we really only had 2 things left to build. We needed like an icon component with SVGs. We needed like a text component. We were just about done. We were kind of laughing in the meeting of like, you think this is a lot of work, but the thing is we already have a vocabulary that can speak a majority of the things you want to say. Now this was one design really early in the process, but we had 2 things to build, but we built those things. Next design comes along, oh, we only had 1 more thing to build. Soon enough, designs come along where we can already say everything you want to communicate. Our job is already done before it even started. I know what you're saying. Whoa, hold on. I know how this stops. I know how this ends. I've seen this happen all over the time. Machines are going to come out. They're going to take over our job, and we're going to be out of work. Fortunately, no. That's not going to be the case. Because now that we're done worried about building components, about writing more CSS, writing more HTML, fixing more bugs because we wrote more code that killed other code, we can start focusing on other things, focus on better things. Focus on accessibility, focus on speed and performance, focus on the page size, focus on build tools, focus on documentation and onboarding. We can focus on all the things that we really wanted to focus on in the first place, but we were too busy building more pages. Design systems are coming. They're already here. Most major organizations are making their own design system for good reason. It saves a lot of money. Now, design systems are the future. I will not fight the future. Thank you.